Book of Exodus probably has the worst reputation of any book in the Bible. My grandfather used to say that you needed to read the book, if you want to read the Bible, read the book of Exodus right before you go to sleep at night so there's nothing on your mind. It continues that legislation that begins in Exodus and goes all the way through Numbers, so it's standing there at Sinai. And it is a book that concerns itself with how to worship God. But that worship of God is not just what we think of as worship of God. It is how to worship God in cult and in life. Now, when I say cult, that's not a four-letter, okay, it is a four-letter word, but it's not a bad word. The word cult in the sort of technical study of religion sense are the acts of worship. Anything done in worship is part of the cult. So if you're reading articles or academic texts on the Old Testament and people talk about the cult of ancient Jerusalem or the cultus of Jerusalem, they're usually referring to anything done in the temple. Sacrifices, songs, prayers, offerings, anything that would be done as a public act of worship. So you can think of the cultus as opposed to, say, dogma or that which is believed. This is that which is done, so that the performance in worship. So the book of Leviticus is how to worship God in cult and in life. Worship of God goes beyond that which is done in the temple. It goes to where you live and what you do when someone in your family has leprosy and who you marry and who you don't marry. All of those are part of worship that Leviticus concerns itself with. It's portrayed as coming directly from the mouth of Yahweh, just exactly like the Ten Commandments. Historically in the church, it has either been selectively ignored or selectively applied, depending on whether you need a scripture to back up or refute someone else. People will pull a single verse out and play what I always called scripture poker. You know how scripture poker works. If you have, say, an ethical choice, then your side picks scripture, your side picks a scripture, and I side picks scripture. You quote one, I quote one, and whoever has scripture left, they're the ones who are right. I think we can get a little more sophisticated in our interpretation of the Bible than that. At least I hope that we can. The book opens with a series of sacrifices. There are 5 types of sacrifices: the whole burnt offering, grain offering, peace offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. These sacrifices meet the needs of both public and private worship. So they help the community as a whole, and they also help individuals. They also serve both expiative and apotropaic purposes. Probably ought to define those words for you. Expiation is finding mercy from God, and then apotropaic is to prevent bad things from happening. So they are sacrifices to prevent something bad from happening or to receive mercy from something bad that's already happened, if you will. There is an emphasis on the proper performance, and this is where people can kind of get cross-eyed when they're reading the Bible. It starts telling you what to do with the fat and what to do with the blood and what to do with this part of the tail and what to do with this part of the animal, and it can get very, very detailed and very, very disgusting. And typically people look at that and see the legalism of it. Remember, don't think of it as legalism, think of it as quality control. There is a right way and a wrong way to worship. You can't just throw any old thing up there and think God's going to accept it. There are proper ways to worship. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and if you do it the wrong way, you can get into some trouble. There is a sliding scale based on income, but sacrifice was supposed to be a sacrifice. So yes, the wealthy are going to have to give more than the poor, but it is going to need to cost everyone. Sacrificial giving needs to be sacrificial. It needs to cost something. You need to be doing without as a result of this giving, of this offering. So we're going to talk more about the book of Leviticus as we get into it, but that is a brief overview of where we're headed.